YouTube, it's Angie. Thank you so much for joining me in my little corner of the internet. I post what I like to call real lifestyle, so that's lifestyle content without the filter. Post a lot about frugal living, mental illness, dopamine dressing, things like that. So if you are interested in lifestyle content that is a little bit less filtered, then please hit that subscribe button and stick around because I'd love to have you here. My goal with this video is to go over the experience of what it's like to get ketamine, the different ways to get ketamine, how it's worked for me, the pros and cons of the different ways of getting ketamine, and kind of just share my experience as a patient. Please keep in mind that I'm not a doctor, and also that we live in Canada, and so experiences vary from province to province and even city to city sometimes. So okay, speaking of lifestyle content that's a little bit less filtered, let's talk about ketamine therapy, because a lot of people don't talk openly about the fact that they're receiving ketamine therapy. And a lot of people don't have access to ketamine therapy because it's so new. You just access your community psychiatrist the way that you would access any other specialist in the community, which is asking your primary doctor, your GP, for a referral to a psychiatrist. I am very lucky to have a community psychiatrist that I have a really good patient relationship with. He's been seeing me for many, many years, and so he knows the extent of my treatment-resistant depression. And the thing is that if you are interested in doing ketamine therapy, especially if you're going to be prescribed it through the public healthcare system, they aren't just going to hand it out as a first-line treatment. Anytime you ask for something that's kind of out of the ordinary or seen as like a specialty thing, you're gonna have to probably make a case for it to your doctor, almost like you're making like a presentation in school. Before I ask for any kind of like new novelty treatment or anything for my depression, I always come in with the facts. That's what I would recommend doing if you are going to be trying to access ketamine through the public healthcare system through a community psychiatrist. Your history of how treatment-resistant depression has affected you, how your depression has resisted treatment, and why it is urgent that you do ketamine therapy now. So those are the three things that I would recommend putting together. I'll even write things down and come in with like a note and like a notepad and read off a notepad if I need to. If your psychiatrist is open to it because you've tried other therapies and they have not worked to treat your depression, then you may be prescribed ketamine. So the thing is that in Canada, each province has its own healthcare system, and each province has its own rules and regulations about, you know, ketamine therapies and things like that. And so here in Alberta, you can get ketamine one of two ways. You can either get it intravenously at a ketamine clinic, or you can get it prescribed to take at home either underneath your tongue, like in a sublingual Ativan or something like that, or through a nasal spray. I'm not going to get into the science of what is more effective and what isn't. I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not the person to be asking those questions. I found that neither of them really worked for me, although I did get energy from the ketamine. My depression and like my mood and like those symptoms, the intrusive thoughts, things like that, those still persisted in spite of the ketamine. But the ketamine did give me energy in a way that nothing that I had tried before ever had. So it was successful in that respect. And for a while there, there was one time I showed up in hospital and I was talking with a psychiatrist and I was like, well, I can't be depressed, I have energy. And he was like, people are depressed and have energy all the time. But my biggest symptom of my depression is extreme fatigue. And so I didn't realize that the ketamine wasn't working to that extent until he said that. You can discuss with your psychiatrist which option is best for you. I found that doing ketamine at home is a lot more convenient. Like do it on like a Friday night when you don't have to work the next day or something like that, and you can just take it and you're in a familiar environment to you, put an eye mask on, put on some music and just like listen to it and just like kind of zone out and have your trip. And It's very convenient that way, and that you can do it at almost any time. You don't need a ride to and from the hospital, things like that. With ketamine through an IV, it was nice to have the nursing staff there. I found the high a lot more intense with ketamine through an IV. In the public healthcare system, you don't, at least in the clinic that I went to, there wasn't a therapist to like talk me through the high. And I know that some private ketamine clinics do offer that, and I'll get to that a little bit later. Public healthcare system, what happened was I would show up for my ketamine appointment. They would put me on the gurney. They would like ask me if I wanted the curtain open or closed around the gurney. There was a bunch of us in a room all set up on different gurneys. They would start the ketamine injection, and it would be over in under an hour. And then I wasn't allowed to drive home after, so I always had to have a ride back home from ketamine. And I found that I was very tired after the trips, so I would recommend like getting a ride home. I know that the hospital, some psychiatrists wouldn't even let their patients take the bus home because they like were worried that they would still be high and feeling the effects. So you will need to arrange for rides, probably. You cannot access it that way, and you have the financial means, there are private ketamine clinics available. I have not done private ketamine, but I know, and I have talked with people who have, and private ketamine experience seems very different. It seems a lot more bougie. It's more like a spa treatment than a medical treatment. The biggest difference between the private ketamine experience and my public healthcare ketamine experience that I'm aware of was that they had a psychiatrist or a therapist to go through what you were tripping, and the trip was seen as part of the therapy. Whereas with my psychiatrist, the trip was not seen as part of the therapy. It was just seen as like a means to an end, like a way to accomplish a goal. I have to trip so that way that ketamine can make changes in my brain so I can feel better. But what I'm tripping, so the fact that I'm like, you know, thinking about experiences with my grandma as a child, like that was not discussed. And honestly, I think that that's something that should be offered, and I would like to see that offered eventually in the public healthcare system, because sometimes the trips, especially if you fall down a K-hole or you have a bad trip, they can be very, very distressing. And so it's nice to have someone to kind of debrief with after, and to have that experience as a patient. You know, there's so many different improvements that need to be made to our mental health care system. We'll see when that happens. That's my experience with getting ketamine. So I tried it IV, and I had a few bad trips, and that didn't work. And I asked actually if I would be able to do it at home because I thought it would be a little bit more convenient with work. So rather than the nasal spray, I did the sublingual tablets, and they taste terrible. It is the worst thing I've ever put in my mouth. It's so bad. Tastes horrible. I'll see if I can find a picture that my mom took of me like taking the ketamine tablet. I had to pick it up from a special pharmacy that compounds the ketamine, and I had to pay up front for the ketamine prescription. And once I paid up front for the ketamine prescription, I was then reimbursed through my Blue Cross plan. And so I was able to get coverage for the ketamine. It was just like I had to go through like this kind of special way to do it. But that is something to consider too. If you don't have good medication coverage, you may want to do ketamine IV over doing ketamine at home, because ketamine at home, you'll have to pick it up from a pharmacy and pay up front for the ketamine. Okay, so I hope that you found this video helpful. If you are looking into exploring ketamine treatment for your depression, if you are, I'm so sorry that you've reached that point, that you are fighting against what Winston Churchill once called the black dog. Like, it's just horrible. It's just always nipping at your heels. I am so sorry, and I hope that you find relief soon, and I hope that this video helped give you a little bit of direction on what access to ketamine therapy might look like in Alberta here in Canada. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in another video. Bye!